Hello and welcome to the Wellness Connection podcast. I'm your host, Fiona Kane. Today I'm going to be talking about the dangers of identifying too much with your wounds. And I'm going to start with a quote from RaQuel Hopkins. RaQuel says, "Be careful not to build your identity around your wounds, because the moment that you start believing your pain makes you different, you'll start protecting that pain instead of healing from it." And I thought that was really powerful when I read that because it's something that I can certainly relate to within my own life and in what I've seen with other people. So she talks about it further in here where she says, there's no such thing as a one size fits all answer to healing, but when it comes to healing, some of us aren't actually healing. She says we're protecting what hurts us, and you see a lot of that. You really do see it when people. There's people that I refer to as, and I got this from Eckhart Tolle. He talks about people with large pain bodies, and you see those people, and they kind of collect all of their pain. So everything that ever happens to them, every slight, everything, every time someone looked at them differently or something, they kind of collect it like trophies, and they hold on to it because apparently it's and you feel the energy of those people, but they hold on to this pain because it seems to be almost they thrive on the pain because they've got nothing else. So the pain is what they start to thrive on. So I'll go back to what Raquel was saying, but she said that this shows up in subtle ways. She said, you might be building your identity around your wounds if you lead every story with what happened to you instead of what you learned from it. So it's always, oh my God, this thing happened to me. But you never have that, what I've learned to do is, and what I've learned about is. And that's actually really, really important because I found that, one of the stories I have was from many years ago, and I've talked about it before. But I had a couple of small strokes when I was in my 20s. And in the beginning, I was very much in the mode of, oh my God, this thing happened to me. And I felt very much a victim of it, and that's like it's valid, that's fine. I mean, it's normal when you are a victim of something or when something happens to you. It's totally normal and totally okay to feel like you are a victim or to feel those sort of emotions and things. That's fine. What I found though is I was talking about it all of the time, but in a way that I started to think, oh, this is unhealthy. Like I couldn't switch to a new song. I couldn't switch to a new playlist or whatever. And it took me time to work through some of the issues. And a lot of it was I had physical health issues that I had to overcome, but I had mental health issues that I had to overcome in regards to my anxiety about health and lots of things like that. And so it took me time. But now when I do reflect on a lot of those earlier experiences I had in my life, I can reflect on, oh, this thing happened and it was terrible at the time, it was really hard, or it was really traumatic, or whatever the experience was. But now what I can do is I can say, hey, but if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have learned this, or if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be doing this, or I wouldn't have discovered this other thing. So I can now, with the majority, if not all of the things that have happened throughout my life, most of them I can see the lesson in it, or I can see something good that came out of it. So it was something on my path that led me to where I am now. But I've tried really hard throughout my life not to get stuck in the sort of victim place or in the place of the trauma, because that can be the real problem when you get stuck there. And there's no judgment for anyone who does get stuck in these places. If you need help to go and get help, go and find a therapist, or do what you need to help you get unstuck. But it is what it is, and sometimes we do get stuck here. But it's just useful to know some of the signs that you could be stuck there, and it's in my opinion, it's a really good idea to learn how to get unstuck from there, because I don't think it benefits your life if you're carrying around this burden of like trauma and pain and you really keep yourself in it. I just don't think that's good for our physical or mental health. So she says that's so the first one that I was just talking about is you lead every story with what happened to you. So the next is you only feel understood when you're talking about your pain. And that is really big these days because I've talked about it before on recent episodes and some older episodes, how people they identify so much with their emotions today that it's just everything's about their pain and everything's about their emotions. And there's nothing wrong with talking about your pain when you need to, and there's nothing wrong with emotions per se, not at all. But we've just become in our society very much attached to it as being kind of what we lead with, and that's not necessarily healthy or helpful as a sort of a long-term strategy. And then she says, then you get defensive when someone challenges the narrative that's keeping you safe. So if you're feeling defensive or feeling a bit angry about me even talking about this in the way I am, there's a clue that you get defensive because that's kind of questioning your narrative, the story you're telling yourself about your pain, right? And she says, you've mistaken feeling seen for being whole. They're not the same thing. So sometimes we think the feeling seen is the thing. And I think it's a big thing these days, especially with us living our lives. And some of us, like me, where I do a podcast, and so I put myself out there. But not even just that. But these days, people have themselves on, TikTok or Insta or wherever they are, sharing everything in their lives. This is me having breakfast. This is me having lunch. This is me going to the dentist. Whatever, every single thing they do, and I think, and actually, even when you see what young people say they want to do with their life these days. When I was younger, it was like to be a fireman or a nurse or this or that or whatever. But today, a lot of people they say they want to be famous or they want to be an influencer or something along those lines. And I think because they perceive the sort of being online all the time and sharing with everybody, the whole kind of Kardashian thing, how they share everything constantly. I think they perceive that, it's like it's a good thing and that makes you a bit of a hero and aren't you wonderful? And I don't think that's true. I think that if you live, not saying it's not okay to share some things and all of that, I certainly do. I think though when you live completely with your life online like that and in public like that, you tend to everything's more performative than it is real. And a lot of those people look to me like they are dead in the eyes and like they are very empty human beings. So yeah, just being seen. There's a lot of people that are seen, but they're not a whole human being, and I suppose they're using their adoration or the likes or the attention or whatever as to make them feel better, when maybe what they need to do is a bit more of an inside work on what's going on internally for them, and being able to be whole within yourself without someone else, like if someone else having to make you whole or make you feel better. You can do that for yourself if you do work on the inside stuff, rather than just working on getting the attention and likes and clicks and attention or whatever variation of attention that you're using to help yourself feel better. And so she said, RaQuel says here, don't let pain become a comfort zone, because the moment you start believing your pain makes you different, you'll start protecting it instead of healing from it. And she says here, healing isn't about denying what happened. It's about refusing to make it your identity. So it's not, and I've talked about this before with a lot of health things and a lot of challenges that we have in our life, that you can have something happen to you and you can talk about that thing and you can do some healing around that thing. And it certainly can become part of your story and part of why and how you are who you are. But it doesn't have to be you. You are not the thing that happened to you. And so it's not about denying what's happened or lying about what's happened or glossing over, or healing faster than that is healthy for you. If you're in a place where you're not there yet, and you're not there yet, that's fine. But just to know that it's good to sort of work through so that you can get through the other side of things, so you can feel more healed around things, rather than keep yourself in that trauma all of the time. And sometimes what happens too is you see friendships where people are trauma bonding. They kind of both want to stay in their trauma and they feed on each other's trauma. Yes, you really are a victim. Yes, you really are a victim. Oh, yes, it's terrible. Yeah, they just stay in that place all the time. It's not healthy. So, uh, in regards to this, what I wanted to say as well is that what we're seeing, and I was talking about how I've been talking about how we have, we're sharing all of our emotions and we're also in touch with them, that sort of thing that you see online. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with having emotions. I've got a whole episode on emotions. I think it's my last one or the one before. But, it's fine to have them. They have a purpose, but they're data. They're not how you rule your life. They're data. Uh, and actually, you see this too when you see discussions. If you watch any online videos of people having discussions about issues around in the world, whether it be politics or cultural or whatever, a lot of people say, "Well, I feel this, I feel this, I feel that," and again, feeling's part of it, but they don't lead with any facts. They're just like, "I feel," and so yeah, I think there's got to be some facts as well. But what I wanted to say was that one thing that I think is egging this on further is that in our culture, in the modern sort of Western culture, so there's a kind of a new version of Marxism. It's been around forever, but this is kind of the newer version. And so in Marxism, there's always been the oppressor oppressed narrative. What's happening now is, we've just changed who the oppressor and oppressed are to match the modern times. And that narrative is one that can really have you being in a victim class or feeling victimized as well. So essentially, the way the narrative is now, and this is you see this playing out throughout the Western world, is that if you have a problem, okay, so if you are poor, you're oppressed. If you're rich, you're an oppressor. If you're successful, you're an oppressor. If you're unsuccessful, you're oppressed. So essentially, it plays out this whole kind of victim oppressor narrative, and it comes down as this really really basic way of looking at the world. And so what it will say is, if you have, say, some sort of disability, health issue, whatever, you're oppressed. And you're being oppressed by the people who don't have that issue. If you have dark skin, you're oppressed. If you have white skin, you definitely an oppressor. If and different religions, whatever, you name it, but anything that these days they consider to be a minority or an oppressed group, they are encouraged to stay in that oppressed place and in that victim mentality, and it's not helpful. It's not helpful to you at all. So even if you are in a valid group of people who have been oppressed, your peoples, your religion, your culture, your color, your race, your sexuality, whatever it is, right? Even if you are in a group that has been oppressed or is oppressed, and a lot of these stories these days they're not current. They're really not, and they're not necessarily true. Some of them are, some of them are not. But even if you are identifying with being oppressed and identifying with being some sort of underclass or or that believing that the system's out to get you and everyone's out to get you, it's not a healthy way of living. It's not a healthy way of being, because most of our problems come from the way that we think about things and what we believe and the dialogue that we have ourselves. And you only have to look around, read books, read autobiographies, see movies, whatever, or stories of people who've overcome all sorts of huge issues where they truly are oppressed and truly are, people have been put in prison for 20 years. People have, all of the things that you read about, the women who've suffered from female genital mutilation, there's so many stories you read of people who've been truly oppressed. The Holocaust, all sorts of things. Right? So there's many, many stories that you can read and that you can learn about of true historic things and people who have been oppressed in the past. And or it may be even more recently, maybe even now. But they kind of say, you know what? I don't care. I don't care about any of that. I'm not going to buy into that story. I'm just going to get on with it. You see the same thing with people with different levels of ability. I think I talked about someone a little while ago on a previous episode who I think he's got no arms and no legs, and he's invented, what did he invent? Something, I can't remember what it is. I can't remember for the life of me what it was, but he people come up with, look, when you focus on what can I do rather than what can't I do, or okay, there's all these things that might hold me back. Hey, but I'm not going to focus on them. I'm going to focus on what I can do. You can achieve great things, and just look around for the people who have done that, because there's plenty of them, and you will see that the amount of people that have had full lives, even though they're deaf or they're blind or they can't walk or they can't speak, or they have had this history of abuse or whatever it is. People can overcome things and people can make a success of themselves. But if they get stuck in the victim place, you will stay there forever. So I'm not in any way discounting anyone's experience, or having a go at, or judging or being mean to people who've had awful things happen to them, and they may be stuck in a certain place, or they haven't kind of achieved what they wanted to achieve. The point of this is not to have a go at anyone for where they are, for what's happened to them, or to disbelieve people about what has or hasn't happened to them. It's more to say that if you want to have a happy, healthy life, if you want to get on with life, get on with it. Look for what you can do, whether that's the tiniest little thing or the biggest thing. This isn't about whether or not you become an astronaut or whether or not you become president or what. A success in life doesn't have to be huge things. It just has to be, I'm focusing on the next thing tomorrow that's going to make my life better. Success could be someone who's able to walk an extra foot more than what they could last time. Or success might be someone who's able to get themselves out of bed and do things in life. Success might be, I don't know, finishing a course. It might be listening to a podcast. It might be getting a job. It might be staying in a job. There's a million different measures for what success might look like. So it's not about measuring somebody else's or measuring against somebody else, or it should look like this or it has to look like that. Essentially, though, if in life we focus on what can I do rather than what I can't do, and what story do I need to tell myself to do well, to have success, whatever that looks like. If we focus on those things, we do better. But if we focus on, I've been hard done by and my life is tough, you just stay there. You just stay there forever. So it's just, my suggestion is that if you want to have a life well lived, then focus on what you can do to move forward from where you are, rather than just staying in that place. And the addition to this that I would like to mention as well in our society is that if you look at, there's certain groups that are sort of, say, political groups or lobbying groups or charities, or whatever they are, more probably political and charities, who they need something to be like, they need you to stay in pain to stay in existence. So they need something to fight for. So certain charities and certain groups, they're fighting for a certain thing, and it's not in their interests for that thing to get better. I'm not saying this in all situations. I'm not having a go at all charities by any means, not at all. But there are just certain groups that there's certain groups that need to have the purpose. They need to have the fight. There's certain people that need to have the fight, actually. And I'm one of them to a certain degree. But there's people who, okay, so there's people who have a fighting spirit, or have or feel the need to get a word out about something, or make a change in the world, or do something better. And so there's people like that who, I'd say Charlie Kirk was one of those people, but people who, just want to make a difference. Then there's the lifelong activist who, not in all cases, but in many cases, is a very unhappy person with really big issues in their life, and they get their purpose from going out and being an activist somewhere and joining some group and being out on the street sticking themselves to concrete or waving a placard or whatever it is. And so there's a certain activist groups and certain charity type groups that are very addicted to the pain and very addicted to the struggle and need to be in the struggle. So even when things get better, they won't see that because they lose their purpose. They also lose their funding. So if you lose your funding and you lose your purpose, if the thing gets better, do you think you are motivated to make it better? And you only have to look at some of the groups that in the world that think about their motivation to make things better. If their people have a better lot in life, they don't have a job anymore. They don't have a purpose anymore. So just be aware of some of the people in the activist space and the space around, fighting for rights and things like that. Look, some of them are amazing and they do great things, and it's great that they're doing what they do, and all of that is absolutely true. Some of them are addicted to the pain and addicted to the fight and need to always be fighting the man and doing the thing or whatever it is. The people that they are representing are just, it could be anyone really. They don't actually care about the fight or the people per se, or like what the topic's about. They just care more that they're fighting. So just be aware there's different types there's people trying to make a change and make a difference and talk in the world and go out and make a difference. I suppose I would clarify by saying, if someone is helping you to do better in your life, if someone is helping you to move forward in your life, if someone is helping you to see a perspective that helps you do better and be successful and do well in life, amazing. If someone is encouraging you to be a victim, encouraging you to identify in a certain way and identify as a victim class, and encouraging you to see how oppressed you are and how bad you have it, and encouraging you to, the only way you could ever, you're never going to make it, and and you'll have to spend your whole life on welfare because you can't possibly look after yourself, that kind of thing, there's a clue. So there's a clue in the outcome. If the outcome is the person's actually trying to make your life better and help you help yourself, that's a healthy way of sort of activism and charity and that sort of stuff, was when you help people be the best that they can be and be successful, whatever that looks like for them, and happy in their lives. But if what you're doing is just trying to create perpetual victims, that person is not helping you. So just be aware of the people around you, what you're associated with, and whether or not you're associated with persons, groups who build you up and help you to become a better version of yourself, or people who it's in their vested interest to keep you feeling like you're a victim. So I just thought I'd add that as well, because of this, the way the world is at the moment. There's a lot of elements and a lot of people with a lot of vested interests who love it when people are victims. So keep that in mind. But yeah, so I just want to get back to, as I close, I'm just going to read that quote again because I think it's a really important quote. Be careful not to build your identity around your wounds, because the moment that you start believing your pain makes you different, you'll start protecting that pain instead of healing from it. And the goal is to heal from the pain, not to protect the pain. There's a difference. Food for thought. So thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, share, and tell your friends about this podcast, rate, review, all of those things. The Wellness Connection is here where I like to have real conversations about things that matter, and I think it matters to talk about these issues I might use the wrong word or say things in a slightly wrong way, but my intentions are good. That I want people to do well, and I want people to achieve wellness. And part of that sometimes is asking ourselves some difficult questions, or looking in the mirror, or those sorts of things. So that's what I'm encouraging you to do, including myself, or working on myself. I don't have it all figured out, and nobody does. And I'm just sharing with you what I learn along the way. Okay, hope you have a great week. Thank you. Talk to you later. Bye.